clean side of that profession. One. And second, let's think about alternatives to the Act on Transparency in Lobbying. Let's talk about alternatives how to make transparency itself the main subject of our consideration. Transparency of dealing of those policymakers on one side and those who are visiting the policymakers and providing them some kind of requests or some proposals. I would remind here that when I was talking about the issue of lobbying with Ambassador Eisen to this country from the United States of America, the chief of this office, he told me that one of his basic accomplishments he is so proud of is that from the introduction of that Obama's Code of Ethics from the officials, any kind of a contact made officially or non-officially by any staff person of the administration is published. In a sense, I have met such a person and we discuss such a topic. And that is posted on the website of the White House. That is a measure of transparency in the sense whoever is interested may look at it. For some time it is there. I don't know technically how they do it because it's quite a lot of information. It may be somewhat organized anyway, but let's think about this other ways of making transparency in dealings, in legislation as a topic number one, and then talk about the responsibility of the audience or those persons who are entering that from outside as a number two of our problem. May I ask your opinion?
I would say that partially, well, of course, everyone knows about this codes of conduct like self-regulation, which is partially solves this question. In Ukraine, we do not have really codes of conduct on what is, although we have some codes of conduct for PR associations, but there are companies that stress that they are clean and they build their reputation for many years, and they say that well, everyone knows that everyone knows about our reputation, and we even don't have clients that will that propose some bad methods. So the market, to some extent, solves this problem of identification clean lobbies. But perhaps, indeed, if we have some kind of confirmation from the state, that would help for instance, for other participants that do not have the resources to, I don't know, to say that, oh, but we are clean, but please turn to us also. So maybe this will somehow facilitate the access to market of those people who also want to deal with like clean lobbying. So maybe this will somehow encourage the competition, perhaps.
Concerning code of conduct or some kind of codex of conduct, the problem is that it doesn't work very much in this country, in the Czech Republic. I can give you two examples concerning lobbying as an issue. The first attempt to regulate somehow lobbying activities in the Czech Parliament, it was in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, when the chairman of Parliament, Mr. Zaorálek, came up with a codex, ethical codex of a member of Parliament. So it means how to deal with a lobbyist and how to behave in a fair way. And even though that there was some kind of political consensus among the political parties in the Parliament, this ethical codex was not approved in the end. So there is nothing like that at all at the moment. The second example is there were some efforts a couple of years ago to introduce a certain code of conduct for practical lobbyists. So it was an initiative of a couple of lobbying firms, kind of, let's say, doing serious business, and to establish kind of association of lobbying firms, public affairs companies, and prepare kind of code of conduct. But in the end of this effort, it failed again, and such an initiative was not very successful. So it is sometimes we can say that this soft regulation or soft law may be good to regulate a certain area, but on the other side, the practical experience shows that it's not so easy to approve, to come up with such a soft law or this code of conduct. Even though, for instance, in that first example, the ethical codex of member of parliament, there was no financial sanction. For instance, if somebody would violate this codex, the only penalty was kind of public apology at a meeting of parliament, to say I'm very sorry what I did, and that was all, but it was not successful anyway. The second point, the second question concerning alternative, or if there is any alternative, how to, if I not understand well this question, or maybe there's another issue which has not been raised, I think, is, and this is an instrument which would reduce administrative burden, which is sometimes kind of criticism that all this reporting, either for lobbyists and for lobby persons, is very difficult. It's time-consuming, and it's an administrative burden for everybody, and who knows what is it good for. But a kind of alternative which was considered quite seriously and discussed at some meetings is make diary of members of parliament public. That means that there is public access, and anybody can see what is the program of a member of parliament, a senator, and who such a person is meeting with. And so this is kind of alternative which is very easy to implement, and it's not an administrative burden at all.
On the code of ethics, there is no such code approved by the Bulgarian parliament. There is a kind of commission on ethics that usually supervise all members of parliament. There was a curious example recently. It was like 3 or 4 months ago. One of the televisions in Bulgaria organized this secret camera provocation for members of parliament. Most of them were invited at a special event at which a new mobile phone technology will be presented, and as a gift they will receive one of the products. This event was organized exactly at the same time while important budgetary law was planned to be voted in the plenary. And 20 members of parliament decided to attend this event instead of voting. And they very quickly entered the news. And then the whole story was subject to investigation by this commission. And no result, of course. No decisions were taken by the commission, as their behavior was not considered as in contradiction with the normal code of ethics. This is just an indicative example. As far as the second question, though there is no adopted law on lobbying in Bulgaria, some other laws somehow compensate the lack of such legislation. And here I would like to mention the law on prevention and disclosure of conflict of interest and the law on political parties. I won't go now into details how they compensate. You may see this in the draft report that is published on PASOS website. This is just an indication that there is an alternative. There is alternative to the law of lobbying, and it could be to some extent compensated.
Yeah, I think it is a very important point, and several of the national reports mentioned it, that there are other provisions, transparency provisions, for example, that could compensate the lack of lobbying regulations. For example, if you have certain transparency provisions in that apply to the process of developing policy planning documents of the government and legislative bills, that could in principle compensate the lack of lobbying regulation. For example, in Latvia, each bill has to be accompanied by an annotation which, among other things, requires to indicate what individuals and organizations were consulted during the development of the bill. Well, I don't have any illusion about how perfect it functions, and again, what you usually have in that line is if there have been consultations with some known legitimate organizations, be it trade unions or the Confederation of Employers or organizations like ours, Providus, they would always write it in the annotation. If there was some consultation that they would not want to have disclosed, of course it's very easy just to leave it, leave that line blank, and that's it. But there's a whole complex. Also, partly I don't remember now. Was it the Bulgaria report which mentioned political party financing regulations that also form a part of the framework which can bring, in principle at least, can bring more transparency to about who are participants and players in the political process. But to go further in the debate, I think we should also address the question which was important at the very beginning of this project, and which was already mentioned today a little bit. Are there any reasons why we should first try to define lobbying as something distinct and different from public interest advocacy that NGOs and think tanks do? And another question related to this: should we at all worry and try to somehow, if a law on lobbying is adopted, should we try somehow exempt or somehow soften requirements that would apply to think tanks and civil society organizations? Or should we just say, if you try to influence decisions, go ahead, disclose what the law requires from anyone, and no problem with that. If you want to influence something, comply with the rules.
Thank you very much for the raised question, and I think this is now again the place for national reporters first, and then I'll have some of my comments as well to that question. Alec, would you like to?
Well, yeah, maybe I can start here. Quite complicated question, but yeah, I'll try to answer. The first bill in the Czech Republic on lobbying regulation, the definition of lobbying was this kind of professional lobbying. So it means lobbying on behalf of a client and have some financial remuneration for that. Then the second bill, the definition of lobbying was broader, I would say, broader, and including also lobbying of, let's say, non-professionals. But non-professionals in a way that they are not representing some clients, but people representing either, because there's lots of lobbyists doing lobbying activities, either as think tanks, NGOs, but also some other interest groups, association of employers, employees, and many others, yeah, including companies and some clusters, and when we look at the business, how it works. So the distinguish between lobbying and advocacy is very, I don't see just like a real barrier between these two areas. Yeah, I think that what was quite good, what I found quite good in the second bill in the Czech Republic is the definition of lobbying. I mean, negative definition of lobbying, and we touched this issue a bit in the first panel too, and it was what is not lobbying, especially any communication or in the bill that was mentioned, what is not lobbying, demonstrative list of activities, what is not considered to be lobbying. First of all, communication via media, whatever communication via media, communication using right, constitutional right of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of association, and so this, I think that it's a kind of good complement to the positive definition of lobbying, which is in a Czech example, kind of communication towards some public office holder, let's say, but this negative list of what lobbying is not is in my opinion quite good additional definition. So to answer the question if we can distinguish lobbying and advocacy, I'm not sure if to which extent we can do that. If somebody from think tank or NGO is visiting a member of parliament and trying to persuade him that something is important and it should be taken into consideration and so on, so I think it's a kind of lobbying. And if we should somehow define advocacy activities, in my opinion, is everything what is on that list, what I mentioned, what is not considered to be lobbying. Yeah. But it means advocacy is a much broader term than lobbying, which is much narrower. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
We had a huge debate also on this topic when we discussed this. First of all, between ourselves, and later on with the politicians that actually introduced the bill in the parliament. In the end, for us, it is a little bit restrictive to a very defined field of work, which means that you have to have in the field the three actors: the beneficiary or the client, the person or the agency that does the service, the lobbyist, and the person or the body or the person that you want to influence. Now, let me give you some examples when we said what happens with this particular example. So the first one, and we had contacts, and we were aware of many instances in Romania where most of the multinational companies coming to Romania did not seek to find a lobby professional to hire. What happened is that they said, well, we need to see a country manager, we need somebody else, and we need somebody to do PR, and we need somebody to do public affairs, not a lobbyist for the company. So you have, let's say, a real example, a tobacco company that hired a very high-profile former journalist to represent them in front of the authorities, because that journalist knew the system from within, and that's it. Is this lobby or not? Because what is happening here, and I'm somehow disagree with what Radomir said before, and that's why I wanted to intervene right now, is that we have, I'm not sure, I never read your constitutions in those 3 other countries or in yours, but I'm pretty sure that this is like there as a right, the right to petition. And the right to petition, it applies to legal and physical persons. It doesn't matter, at least in my country. Maybe there might be a difference also from this point of view. So if you have the right to petition as an individual, as an NGO, or as a company, so my right as a tobacco company is to petition the authorities with somebody from within, actually, instead of outsourcing the lobby activity. So it's very easily to reject putting a label on this as being lobby, as I'm saying this is not lobby, this is me exercising my right to petition. With professionals that I hire to formulate my message very professional, very articulate, so on and so on. So that's why we stopped. Actually, we got out of this and we said, well, we cannot jump at least from the very first moment. Not that we exclude this on the long run, but we said it will be probably too messy and too complicated to deal also with this at the beginning. And we said, well, this is what I said. So for us, it's actually a client, a lobbyist, and the public official that you influence, and we define what does it mean a public official, what is the lobbyist, and so on, and we narrowed this to this. As for NGOs, this is advocacy. I mean, this is the same thing. I mean, you don't have a client. It's for your own good. I mean, even if my organization at some point, that's a real thing, was fighting for the clawback tax, for those that know what does it mean. It's some piece of legislation that tax a lot the pharmaceutical industry. We felt that this is the right thing in Romania. We were involved in this because we know that we are doing the right thing. We never thought of asking for the money as a lobbyist, because it would have been, the impact was like hundreds of millions of euros in taxes gained by the government that they wanted not to be imposed. So if it would have been, like mercenaries, like lobbyists probably would have asked for like 1%, which would have been millions anyway. And we said, well, we want money only for the debates and for a person to dig into the legislation and to compile a report. So for us, that was not lobby, and then again, as I said, think tanks, NGOs in general, do not make lobby, they make advocacy. Lobby is if somebody knocks on your door and say, well, I'm a company and I want you, because I've seen that you are always in the parliament, and I want to, increase my profit, and in order of this, I want you to support an amendment that will favor my company, which we will never do. And it will be anyway illegal, because we cannot perform commercial activities. This will not ever be considered a grant, because talking about different pieces of legislation, we have a law on grants for NGOs. And that's another, as you mentioned, different other laws. So this is also a safeguard for us. I don't know, there are many other things, but then again, or ask us on this. I have more other things to say on why did we come to this narrow field, but I will stop here.
Okay.
It is important to be made this clear definition, differentiation between lobbying and advocacy, mainly in terms of NGO and think tanks' interest. As Vance said in the morning, most of the reports indicate that regulating lobbying would have a positive effect on them. But this is true only if this differentiation between advocacy and lobbying is done. Because, as Adrian said, lobbying means to do something and to approach someone in exchange of money or concrete benefits, while advocacy is something else.
Well, first, I agree with my colleague that advocacy is a much broader concept, and well, lobbying itself is a kind of not really strict concept, but advocacy is even less strict. But one of the definitions of advocacy, yes, we maybe have heard already, that it is like something for public interest. But I want to say that in fact, public interest, again, this is several already, that public interest is some kind of theoretical thing, and in practice we rather should speak about group of interests as it is usual to treat it. Because, well, for instance, we have an issue of ecology, yes, public environment. We want a good environment, but anyway, this would touch many groups of interests, producers and consumers and taxpayers and so on. So it's a kind of, in practice, it's difficult to have one public interest. And also one more issue is about NGOs. It may be that if NGOs are treated in some other way, some preferential treatment or something, we will have different NGOs than we have now. Some NGOs will emerge that are not NGOs in current understanding. They will be more like a commercial. Well, I would like to say that now in Ukraine, for instance, many NGOs, the situation is somewhat contrary, because NGOs sometimes have to do some work for like payment or, well, the situation is that legal framework sometimes doesn't satisfy NGOs, and they have to register some entities, legal entities simultaneously. So they may be in fact NGOs, but in paper they may be not only NGOs but also some for-profit entities. So again, there is some kind of there may be a diversion between reality and between legal issues.
So, thank you very much for expressing these views. From my point of view, it seems that we are more or less saying that there is a need to distinguish the lobbying for fee in the interests of the client from advocacy in the, but not public interest, but made in a public way, in a way that is transparently written, media transmitted, whatever might be the methods. So I would say that we are talking about lobbying as any activity that is aimed on kind of a legislative changes or decision-making process influencing, that is made in a way not thought of as a public kind of a statement, report, information that is from the very beginning aimed to the general public plus the person that is being informed about the attempt. So it's in that way as Radek said, it's better to define the lobbying as an activity which, from the negative point of view, which is not, what is not legitimate, not a kind of activity. On the other side, I would once more stress that if you would like to have a lobbying as a profession, clean profession from the point of view just separated from corruptive behavior, then I think there is a need for defining it as an activity which is not aimed to provide kind of a provision to a person that acts as such, that is contacting somebody and waiting for a provision for successful influencing of the decision making. That is a very important part of what I have seen in that Canadian law, that this requirement is in the law, so that if you violate that, if you accept additional payment for a success in your lobbying activities, a provision which is very much common in this country, by the way, to take provisions for anything, then you are already acting criminally, and you may be close to be sanctioned for that. In other words, I'm now trying to turn our attention for the last few minutes for, is there any need of sanctioning people who are not behaving so that the profession of lobbyist is a clean one?
Can I just say something about, first of all, your example of Canada? You raised it the second time here. First of all, what we did back home was actually, in order to advocate for law, we said that why do you, for those that do not want it to happen, we said, why do you reject it? Why don't you reject then lawyers? Because it's the same thing as having lawyers. I mean, you can go, sure, in most of the cases, you can go in front of a court and defend yourself. At some stages, you cannot do it yourself, right? But instead of having this right, which is again enshrined in the constitutions, you hire a professional, right? Well, why don't you hire? Why do you deny us the possibility, instead of, presenting our demands in terms of regulations in front of some MPs or whatever, hire a professional? Why do you actually, by not saying that this is illegal, you are denying us this right? Now, the parallel that you can make between these bonuses that you're actually saying and the lawyers, it's actually the same thing. I mean, no lawyer, or it is something very peculiar, they will say, you are accused of rape. If you give me this amount of money to represent you, I guarantee you in the contract that you will not be convicted, or you will get away with money. So it's the same thing with the lobbyists that say, I will guarantee you that this law will pass, or it will be blocked, or whatever you intend to do. So it's the same thing. I mean, this is trafficking. This is trafficking of influence. This is influence peddling that can happen, and it happened. And we have also lawyers that are doing this kind of practice in Romania with corrupt judges, and they are arrested. And it can happen also with a lobbyist. So if you are saying that you are from the heaven, you are saying from the very first to say, I will guarantee you that this will pass, it's actually influence trafficking. It's not lobbying. In terms of bonuses, it's hard to say. That bonuses is a bonus. It might be there, it might not be. It's hard to say that this is legal or illegal.
Okay, this push.
Okay. Can I have a short comment concerning the difference between lobbying for business purposes, as Adriana mentioned that, and business and lobbying for public interest, the term which Petr used, for instance. Well, because there are some political researchers, people doing research in political science and political processes, believing that in general there is there is no public interest. What exists is there are particular interests of different stakeholders, different interest groups, and the sum of particular interest can result into some public interest. So I quite agree with the statement, and I don't believe that there is something like lobbying for public interest. There is lobbying for particular interest, which can be accepted by, let's say, majority of population, majority of the stakeholders, and can result in some kind of public interest. But I don't think whether we can, well, distinguish it.
Pro-abortion, it's what? Lobbying for abortion.
Yeah, but just to understand me better, I distinguish between publicly promoting something from promoting behind the public availability to that. That's what I'm talking about more. The public appearance whenever I'm promoting something is one thing. Contacting people and persuading them to do something on behalf of somebody else is another thing. And this is what I think, these are the distinguishing lines which I'm talking about.
I think probably in practical policy terms, handling this issue does not necessarily require fundamental reconsideration of lobbying definitions, etc. Because I see that most lobbying definitions, general lobbying definitions, have the influence element at the core. And the influences can be done in different ways because of a huge variety of reasons, for free or for a fee or based on a grant or in whatever ways. But I don't think that there's anything that precludes, when it comes to drafting regulations, of defining a certain type of activity which is lobbying for a fee as a particular type of activity on which we may want to impose specific rules, and we not necessarily have to impose the same rules on all other instances when someone, for whatever reasons, tries to influence politicians, and in this way we can have this policy developed as we want, and the scope can be made narrower or broader without perhaps blurring these lines of what is private interest lobbying, what is public interest advocacy, etc. Because really, also for large commercial interests, hiring a lobbyist professional is just one of the many ways of lobbying tactics. They can choose many other tactics too that would still be lobbying, but it's not necessary. It's
Illegal.
Illegal, yeah, sure. Therefore, if we talk about the general definition of lobbying, I have difficulty with saying only hired activity is lobbying, and let's say advocacy based on a grant agreement is not lobbying. I have difficulty with that. But for regulatory purposes, there are different ways to change the scope of the law. It does not have to necessarily cover with the same rules all possible forms of lobbying.
Picture, some of my colleagues that didn't agree with the main idea that we had were always and repeatedly coming with this line. Picture the Orthodox Church, which is the majority church in Romania first, having to file disclosure acts for lobbying because church is a major player and has a huge influence in Romanian politics, as in the region. So you have to start somewhere and you have to make sure that the law passes. Because if you will scare everybody, if you will say, you know, whoever influences the decision is a loss. NGOs, everybody will disagree at the moment. So it has to come in stages.
This is exactly what we don't want to achieve, of course. So perhaps now we have last 5-6 minutes of the time we have given for this workshop or seminar. Are there some remarks, some comments from the floor? Perhaps from the point of view of PASOS, whether we should really be actively involved further on this kind of issue of having or not having the regulations of lobbying in our countries, or the countries where PASOS is active. Jeff, would you like to comment on that?
Well, I mean, maybe to what extent you think from, you know, the differences in the different countries, that there should be a certain coordination of approach across the ultimate laws are going to have to be adapted to local circumstances. But also whether this is something which should be addressed at the EU level as well. That would be my question. Because that's also where PASOS or a number of different think tanks can have a concerted, even lobbying impact internationally.
Yes, thank you. But from this point of view, mentioning PASOS and EU, of course, I would recommend directly that taking into account the regulations of EU and the requests that I would recommend to every member of the PASOS from any EU member state to register into the EU register of lobbyists, because it is opening doors, at least, is a good kind of a benefit. And second, it is showing that we are a serious partner to negotiations with the members of parliament and commission at the level. Yeah.
And there is another part to this. Sorry? There is another benefit that we didn't mention for this, because we are also registered at the local register, the European Parliament and the European Commission. They send you automatically different drafts of legislation and the decisions that they want to debate. They send them by default, so you don't have to request them. So if you're registered to this, it's also a plus.
Thank you. So that's another and a very good example that the direct involvement with at least the EU level is for us a benefit, and we should be aware of that. So I might ask one after the other of this panel to say a few concluding words.
So just to be very brief and how to conclude. I personally support the certain regulation of lobbying, because I'm persuaded that it can contribute to better transparency of legislative processes, of democratic processes, and together with general disclosure of information, disclosure of documents on a level of public administration, and I mean public procurement, publishing of contracts with suppliers, with service providers, and free access to information. It's kind of certain connections with these three other issues. So I think that the regulation of lobbying can somehow contribute to, well, more transparent system and less corruption, and this is what is my expectation from such a regulation.
Clear statement, yes.
I must agree with the views which have been already expressed. Well, as to Ukraine, you know, when it goes to, when some law some draft is discussed, it is often said that we do not need one more bad law, because we have so many of them. And I stick to that view that we should really ensure that at least the law is of high quality, at least. Implementation is another issue, but to adopt a law that is not of good quality, it would be bad, because it would create something, well, it's like anti-corruption law. Yes, we do have anti-corruption law, but in fact we have so much corruption, and so it's kind of somewhat of a deception. And of course we should work in other areas. There is plenty, much of work. So the lobbying is only one problem. But of course, really some soft regulations may be quite adequate. Perhaps it is reasonable to start from something soft, and then to see how it will work, and what works, what doesn't work, and to amend and to extend the regulations. Yeah.
Just a few words. The lack of specific legislation affects the adequacy of the legal acts as a whole, and contributes to an overall mistrust in the political establishment and all kind of legislative institutions. At least this is the case in Bulgaria. So maybe a kind of regulation would contribute to a better political climate. What is needed and what is important is a careful, comprehensive and coherent legal framework, not only a single act on lobbying, but a legal framework that will provide a good basis for diminishing the extent of corruption.
As a final word, I want to emphasize once again that this is inevitable. The modern society puts us in a position where we are becoming more and more specialized in what we do, more and more, taken, and that the jobs take control of us. We don't have time to go to the city hall, not to mention to the parliament, and to go be there in all this process in the parliament or with the government and so on and so forth. You have a professional that does everything. Somebody deals with the antivirus in the laptop, somebody deals with the pavement, somebody deals with... You have to have a professional to address this problem. This will be for sure. The speed that in the last years also, and because of also the crisis, the war crisis, economic crisis, some pieces of legislation are adopted so quickly that sometimes you don't even, you discover all of a sudden that you have probably 3 or 4 days to jump into the process. And you are somebody that has no experience. You have no chance to intervene and to make your voice heard there, not to mention to actually shape the law the way you would like to. So the only option for you is, as I said, turn the yellow pages to L and call a lobbyist. It's inevitable to have this profession. It will be required as a market service. Look at it from this perspective. Maybe I look crazy, but this will be in the future, and the future will be probably in no more than 5 years.
Thank you. Alex?
Thank you. Intuitively, I think it is important to have a certain level of regulation. I also have a feeling that that an incremental approach would actually be quite practical. Some people criticize the European institutions, the Parliament and the Commission, on the basis that they have not introduced a mandatory register, and they don't impose an obligation to register. But at the same time, I think that probably there were good reasons why they so far have not done it. And it also must be remembered that still we don't have any Western European country with a comprehensive lobbying law, and still many of them enjoy more trust of institutions of those countries often enjoy more trust than some of the countries in Eastern Europe, which are full of anti-corruption laws and everything, but still the trust is not always there. I think it needs to be communicated to the public that we are not going, even when we adopt a law, for example, on lobbying, that we are not going to make a revolution or something, and that it's a step-by-step process where it's a part of a gradual progress rather than some sort of an immediate solution. Experts usually don't need this to be explained to them, they know it. But I commonly encounter some journalists in Latvia who come to me and ask, well, the anti-corruption agency prepared a policy planning document on lobbying. So, if this is adopted, will we once and for all be able to eliminate those secret pulling of strings in politics? And I say, well, those who are really secret and those who are really influential, no, this measure will not deal with it, and especially not immediately, for sure. And the reaction is sometimes, okay, then that means it's bullshit. and it's very important, I think, realistically to communicate to the public what it can achieve and what it cannot achieve, at least not in the short term. But such gradual, reasonable approach would be good and help achieve more legitimacy to this type of activity when it is done honestly and transparently.
No, thank you, panelists. Thank you for your work and for your participation in the project. I would like to thank also to American Center, not already represented by Thomas Kleivo, who was here with us for a while. But it was a very, very friendly gesture of them to provide us these rooms for the seminar. I would like also to thank Petra Snajder-Walenska for her help in organizing this with the ITEL PASOS Secretariat. Thank you to all that you have been here with us during all that day. Nice day outside, and I hope a bit interesting discussion here. Let me conclude by hoping that what we are doing is a part of an effort to make the decision-making in the countries we are representing more transparent. That includes also enhancing the transparency in a new and important professional lobbying as something which we are involved partially directly or partially indirectly through advocacy. And all that should be done, as Vlad said, in a gradual effort, but sustainable one, which will lead us to some final improvement of our political climate in this country. Thank you very much. And that's it, concluding the seminar. Thank you.